Welcome back to this new episode of the Computational Antitrust podcast. My name is Thibault Schrepel. I am a faculty affiliate at Stanford University Codex Center, an associate professor of law at the VU Amsterdam, and the creator of the Computational Antitrust project, which explores how legal informatics can benefit antitrust law. The project brings together over 75 antitrust agencies and about 50 academics on the advisory board. Every month or so, we publish an academic article on the subject of computational antitrust. You can find all of our publications at computationalantitrust.com. Today's guest is Andy Chen, Vice Chair of the Taiwan Fair Trade Commission, the TFTC. In our conversation, Andy and I talk about how the TFTC uses computational tools in the context of merger review, price monitoring, and cartel detection. Andy also shares insights on the agency's internal structure, the challenges of explainability in the age of machine learning, and how computational antitrust might reshape antitrust in Taiwan by 2040. I hope you enjoy our discussion. Andy, thank you so very much for joining me on the podcast. What I've done is that I've divided my questions in two different parts. First, I want to talk about the prison landscape in Taiwan, and I'll be more specific when it comes to the tools, to how you have organized the agency around the use of computational tools. And then I want to move towards part two of our discussion, in which I want to talk about accountability or liability / the future of enforcement. And obviously, those two are very much related. But before we start, I have a question for you. What is a main passion of yours outside of antitrust? And do you think it may actually impact your view of the world and or your view of antitrust, your work ethic, or is it something totally unrelated?
I think my hobby or interest outside antitrust is I like reading and writing. So actually, I have always been dreaming of becoming a writer ever since I was young. I won a writing contest when I was 11. And I think I was so deluded into believing that someday I'm going to win a Nobel Prize in literature. But it won't take long before I realize that is not going to happen because I simply did not have the gift. But anyway, I still enjoy reading and writing. So if I retire, I probably want to spend some time in writing something. And I think that also affect my views towards teaching antitrust and practicing antitrust law. Because the book or the writing that I enjoy most is related to what I call individualism. I'm a believer in self-constraint and less government intervention is better. So I think there's a reason why I pick up antitrust when I'm pursuing my PhD degree. It's a good combination of the two. On the one side, it's more literary, romantic, but also I could digest something from the literary work and apply that kind of spirit into my work. So far, so good. I think it's a good match between these two.
And it's good to some extent that you are mentioning that the romantic part is for the fiction and the writing part of yourself.
Yeah.
And then there is the antitrust part. I've once wrote a paper actually entitled Antitrust Without Romance. And I was making a point that we are very romantic in how we approach antitrust and seeing enforcers, big companies as the best ever and people or companies that could never do wrong. When in fact, reality, I'd argue, is always more challenging and nuanced. But the funny thing is that if you end up winning the Nobel Prize in literature, then that video and that interview will be worth a lot of money and a lot of views.
Yeah, I know.
For you to retire.
So keep it, don't lose it.
Yeah, no. It will be hosted on some of the big tech companies' platforms, so it depends on them, as we'll maybe talk about today. All right.
Okay.
Back to the more serious stuff, although I think literature is very serious. So first I want to talk about the prison landscape. And I think we can start with your experience as an enforcer. As you also mentioned, you also happen to be a professor of law, so you have this kind of dual hats. But talking about your work at the TFTC, what are the major cases in the last couple of years and how important you think computational antitrust was in those cases, if it was. And feel free, by all means, if you think computational antitrust at the time didn't play a role.
Okay, I think I probably just want to mention one recent and high-profile case because that case illustrates well about the importance of computational analysis. And the case is about the Uber Eats, the merger between Uber Eats and Foodpanda is a food delivery platform. And we blocked the merger last December. And currently, computational analysis is conducted by our agency to first, to conduct data mining, and secondly, the data visualization. And I think the Uber Eats case illustrates well how we function these two approaches to the real cases. So for example, in terms of data mining, we have received a big chunk of data and materials and evidence from the emerging parties. I think it's more than 100 million pieces of information concerning business revenue or the services they provided in the past couple of years. And in addition to that, we also collect our own data by market surveys on the consumer's preference about food delivery platform in Taiwan. So there are a lot of information and data need to be digested and analyzed. And during the review, we've discovered that some of the information were incomplete, especially regarding the location of the restaurant. I think the 40% of the information were incomplete. So we use our own program and together with the machine learning program developed by Google to make that complete. So we reduce the incomplete rate down to 2%. So this is basically our data mining parts. And after we structure those data, we move on to the data visualization. So we, for example, we use this digital tool to draw the time series chart and to show the price fluctuation or the change of the market share. And we also use what we call the choropleth map of Taiwan to present the percentage of single homing platform users to multi-homing platform user. And then the structural information was very helpful in assisting us to conduct competitive analysis, particularly the determination of the GAPI, the upward pricing pressure index. That's why we have employed the digital tool to analyze this case. But of course, there are other cases. For example, in the cartel cases involving the food store market, it's a small food station assembled by local residents and is open to the public. And we have received complaint from the public that those stores were engaging in cartel. And in that case, we use the R program language to visualize the geographic market. Of course, we collect a lot of data and then we structure the data and use the R language to visualize the geographic market. And similar approaches were applied to other cases. For example, we have the case concerning the cartel between hospitals and also the merger between movie theaters. We also use this similar approach, such as the isochronous fencers, to determine the boundary of competition. So these three cases probably is the most evident that computational approach could contribute significantly to case analysis, at least in the case of TFTC. Yeah.
So indeed, you used it to visualize the data, to fix the data or the incompleteness of the data that you had, to better understand the data than you had and make the analysis more complete, more dynamic as well.
Yeah.
Now, there are specific challenges related to your economy in Taiwan that you monitor very closely as the TFTC, and are you using computational tools as well to better understand what's happening in those industries?
Do you mean the digital economy?
Yeah, it could be digital. I'm guessing, of course, when it comes to tech
Yeah,
as a foreigner, that's what I think about. But
yeah.
maybe you will tell me that
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
your main industry is something that I
In,
can't see from outside.
in terms of challenge, I think we have, as we described in our white paper about the competition in digital economy, we have noticed that the digital platform has getting more and more important and even indispensable for market competition, and the market has getting more and more centralized. And the importance of data is also becoming more and more crucial for market competition. But technically speaking, I think the most challenging will come from the use of algorithm and the AI, because companies are increasingly rely on algorithm and the AI technology to make a price adjustment. And that will accelerate the speed and the frequency of price adjustments. And for competition agency, it also means that we need to be quicker in order to grasp the market development, especially when we try to analyze the competitive effect from a certain actions or conduct engaged by the digital company. We probably need much more tools that could effectively assist us to conduct data analysis, especially the data that will be created from this kind of rapid interaction in the digital market. And I think the computational tool truly very useful in assisting the TFTs to face this kind of challenge and to facilitate our enforcement activities in terms of the digital market. Yeah.
So actually, your agency has now experience in the use of those tools. You were one of the early adopters. And in one of our reports, you actually mentioned the use of Q-learning algorithms and web crawlers to monitor and detect whether pricing practices when it comes to soybean and corn and wheat and other daily necessities were likely to raise concern over started actions, collusion, virtual agreements. How effective, now that it's been a couple of years, actually 3 years that you've mentioned those, how effective is it? Have you changed the course of action when it comes to the use of those tools? Are you happy with it? Are you disappointed because you thought it would be more of a magical solution to all of your problems? What's your take now that you have some years of experience?
Yeah, I think the purpose of using Q-learning and web crawlers is to monitor price fluctuations in identifying the potential patterns of concerted action within these markets. The competition tool also enabled the TFTC to update database for future analysis, because by using this tool, we can collect more data in addition to gathering data from the data reports by business in those markets. And I think by collecting all this data, we use the methodology such as the co-integration. The TFTC could analyze the data to establish what the indirect evidence that could be used to support the investigation and even sanctions. So that the Q-learning and the web crawler has proved to be very effective in assisting our monitor survey of the pricing behavior in those markets. And fortunately, for the past 3 years, we did not find any violation of antitrust law, because through those tools, we did not observe any concerted action, especially in terms of price decision, pricing behavior. We did not find a concerted action. So there is no investigation filed against those companies in those markets. But still, we are still using those tools to monitor these two markets.
Are you saying, unfortunately, because it would have been a good way for you to justify the use of those tools and to increase the budget? Or are you saying, fortunately, because it means...
There's no cartel.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's no cartel.
Okay, fortunately. All right.
Through the digital tool, we fortunately find out that there is no cartel in the commodity markets or bulk markets. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And so another computational tool that you've been using for quite some time is the use of logistic regression model. And what you do specifically is that you use it to analyze the anti-competitive effects arising from mergers that are notified to you. How did you find these models in practice? Are you happy? And I guess the big question is always, what could you do with those that you could not do if you didn't use logistic regression model?
Okay. The logistics regression model was first applied in 2019 to a merger case involving the two largest karaoke service provider in Taiwan. The biggest two companies tried to merge in Taiwan. And the primary objective was to assess the competition restraining effects from the merger. And as you have known, that the application of the logistic regression model required data on price and also business turnover, consumers' income, and operating cost. So we analyzed the data on market share, product characteristics, and pricing behavior to assess the competition dynamics with a specific focus on the pressure of price increase following the merger. And logistic regression model could present the pressure of price increase in the form of percentage. I think that is the benefit that a traditional tool such as a GAPI is unable to provide. So if we take the case as an example, in that case, if you conduct a GAPI, the percentage is about 7.303% to 15.11%. But if you use the logistics regression model, you can discover very precisely the percentage of price increase would be 23.86% to 29.49%. This is the data that my colleague provided to me. So I think it offered benefits for us to observe more clearly the effect on price. And also we could use this kind of information to justify our investigative actions and even to persuade the merging party to accept our decision because we block the merger eventually. But offer a kind of very scientific and persuasive, compelling evidence to support our enforcement and at least to try to persuade the emerging party to accept the final result. And also the regression model could simulate the post-merger changes in market condition, such as the effects on market share distribution resulting from the price increase. And this is also the capability particularly critical for digital cases and could make up for the shortcomings of the conventional methods. So it provided these two benefits that a conventional methodology or tool cannot provide. But of course, the application of logistic regression model require more extensive data and involve more complex operations compared to the traditional HHI or GAPI. So as a result, currently at the TFTC, the HHI and GAPI are typically used as the functional analytical tools. And the decision to employ the logistic regression model will depend on the significance of the case and also the quality of the data available.
Yeah. So you can't just deploy that to every single merger, the hundreds of mergers that are coming your way. Now, one follow-up question is, you mentioned karaoke companies. What are their providing? Are they organizing like real life karaoke, or are they doing like online kind of games for people?
It's a physical karaoke.
But what would you need like a big company to organize it?
Because they want to get bigger. And actually, I think the market was declining at that time.
Okay.
And for the past couple of years, those two companies has moved their business more to China. So they have more market share in China, probably. But in Taiwan still, they are still very large. But I think the demands a little bit decreasing for the past couple of years. But in 2000, I think the case is 2019 is still it's a booming business at that time.
Okay, so COVID came after karaoke. That's the lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
One very last question I have, it's more of a bridge between the first part of the conversation and the second one. Which tools are you currently developing? So I'm not talking about what you may want to develop in 10 years, but what you are doing today. Are you working on something? Can you make announcements? And I'm not asking that you provide any information so that company can work something around your enforcement capacities, but what are you currently investigating or interested in?
Currently, we are working on the model of machine learning to predict the price trend. By developing those models, we use the tools such as the decision trees, random forest, and the LSTM to create a model to predict pricing trend and to detect algorithmic collusion. And we hope we could have a solid program to assist us in fighting cartel, because that is really an enforcement challenge for the TFTC. And in addition to that, currently we are working on automating our database through AI technology. By that, I mean that we try to use AI technology to do research, to compile the cases, or to synthesize the decisions we have made in the past, to make the finding or researching of the material more easily and quickly. So right now, there are two projects that we are currently engaging in terms of developing new tools.
Yeah. So one is internal, better understand what you do and what you have,
Yeah.
which is the case law. The other one is looking at the outside world, right? And better understand practice.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
So for you to be able to develop all that, you need capacity. You also need the proper institutional design. If I'm correct, you have around 200 employees at the TFTC. How many of those employees
Yes,
have
that's correct.
some sort of technical expertise, and do they work as a separate unit, or do they work within existing teams?
Yeah. We have a separate unit. It's what we call the Office of Economic Analysis, Office of Information and Economic Analysis. But it's a little bit embarrassing to say we only have eight individuals who are responsible for conducting computational analysis. And the eight individuals are all economists. Actually, we don't have technical experts in our agency. So they are very good, actually. They're economists, and they are very eager to learn new tools, even though they are not data scientists, but still they are very open to new information, new technology. And I think that is something that we need to do more, try to recruit more personnel, but it all depends on the budget. So it may not be easy right now.
That's why I was asking about the fortunately or unfortunately, because if you've been running some of those tools without results, it may be harder to then justify for a higher budget.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We should have done poor in order to get more budget.
No, I guess again,
so we can say, oh,
this is the good news. Yeah, but for consumers, you have like about 4% of your employees with some technical expertise, which is pretty much higher than many agencies all over the world, at least from what I can see.
Really?
Yeah, it is.
Really? I use the term embarrassing because I thought many jurisdictions should have more personnel in doing all this kind of computational analysis.
This is not necessarily what I see. Some agencies have dozens of computer and data scientists, and some others have maybe 1-2 person.
Okay.
You have agencies with no economist as well, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, what you need is also a way for your lawyers to understand what those tools may actually provide them with. How is that a concern of you? How are you dealing with this kind of interplay between the technicalities of computational tools and what lawyers need eventually, which is something they can understand and justify even to the companies, as you explained?
We try to enhance their understanding of computational output by doing the following three things. First, among all the commissioners, we have some commissioners who possess the background in economics and also have some basic skill in computer science and the knowledge required to do computational analysis. So we needed those commissioners' instruction, a special teaching to our staff to conduct those computational analysis, and then translate the output into a more accessible language to the commissioners who do not have the background, either economics or technology. And secondly, when reviewing complex cases, we typically will hold pre-meetings and sometimes several pre-meetings with all commissioners. And in that meeting, our staff who are responsible for doing computational analysis will present the output in a much more accessible manner to commissioners who are lawyers, and then try to answer the question they have and try to obtain their feedbacks and even sometimes revise based on the suggestion made by the lawyer, because lawyers sometimes could give very good question, and it's enlightening to have those questions and to think it over again regarding the models, regarding the output, and there may be some very tiny question that need to be revised or something like that. So this is the second approach. And the third approach is that if we really have a very huge project, we probably will outsource to industry experts or professor from university or researcher from academia. And they will do the research, they will do the analysis for us. And then we will hold a hearing, inviting all the experts, stakeholders, and commissioner within our agency together to have a meeting and discuss all these results and to exchange the perspective on the outcome. So I think that basically this is the three approaches we are doing right now to enhance the non-economist law commissioners' understanding of those computational output.
I'm not surprised to hear that lawyers ask good questions. This is what good lawyers do. They do ask good questions.
Yeah, but we don't have good answers.
Exactly. That's not our job. Asking the good question is already hard enough.
Yeah.
That's a perfect segue to part two of the conversation, because as you mentioned, and I'm guessing your case handlers or members of the board will ask the good questions, knowing that they will have to justify the decision to the companies involved and eventually maybe to a court. And so here I want to talk about the accountability of the agency and where all of that may actually play a role in leading the agency towards certain tools and not others. You've mentioned that you've blocked a merger. I am assuming that the companies did not appeal that decision, but if they were to appeal the decision, and if you used computational evidence, then you need that to be convincing before a judge. Now, my question is this. Is that a constraint that you have in mind? And if so, how is it shaping the use of computational tools from within?
Yes, it's quite challenging to explain the computational output to the judge. And the cases I have just mentioned, the merger case, actually the parties all appeal to the court. And so in the court, we need to explain to the judge regarding how do you compute the market share? Why do you use this type of model to analyze competitive effect rather than the other models? So it is really challenging, especially when you take into account that it is usually the investigation team and the staff from the legal department that will appear in court and try to explain to the judge regarding the computational output, not the person who actually is doing those computation. So it will make things more challenging and complicated. We try to improve that situation by adopting probably two major approaches to address the issue. For example, as you just mentioned, and for me, it's very important right now for the TFTC. Since I was in my acting chairperson role, I quite usually encourage what we academicians like to call the cross-pollination within our agency. I encourage interdepartmental dialogue or collaboration, sharing the views, the perspective on computation output, and try to learn from each other, especially for the economic analysis department to share in their view regarding how the computational output could assist legal interpretation, how they could assist the legal team to more persuasively persuade the judge. So let's see our internal efforts to try to address this kind of issue of explaining the result to the judge. And additionally, we just held the first roundtable with the judge last August. It's a law and economic roundtable. So our staff hold several sessions in that roundtable and try to explain how economic analysis, including computational tools and technique, could be applied in cases, especially in merger cases, because merger cases always impose the biggest challenge to judge. So I think even though that's the first time we talk directly to judge, but I personally wish that could continue this year and for the years to come, because after the roundtable, I think they have a very positive reaction, feedbacks about this kind of dialogue between the enforcement agency and the judiciary branch. Of course, there are some concern about the remaining impartiality by the judge, and some judge might be a little bit hesitant to join us, but I think it needs time for them to understand the importance of computation tools. So basically, that's what we have been doing in the past regarding this issue.
Yeah, it seems to me to be the only way. If you don't want judges to just rely on impressions, such as, oh, it's AI, therefore it's bad, or, oh, it's AI, therefore it must be good. If you want them to really understand the relevance of the evidence that is submitted to them, they have no choice but to have some sort of training, and agencies or experts are well placed. Now, as you mentioned, they are concerned, but with the right institutional design, I see no reason why they couldn't be addressed. Oh, those judges will eventually assign liability if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, within the TFTC, who do you think should be accountable in case machine learning, let's say, came up with evidence and it can be proven wrong? Let's go back to your example. You predict that the effect of the merger will be that prices will increase by 25%. However, you may give the green light to the merger with some divestitures, and then you measure a couple of years after and that it wasn't 25%, but let's say the prices went down. Who should be accountable for that? Should it be the person who designed the tool? Should it be you as the chair of the TFTC? Should it be the AI system itself that you could also punish in the training? What's your view on?
Because the TFTC is an independent and a collegiate agency, so all the decision, the case decision, will be made by the commissioners' meeting. It means that the commissioners jointly will shoulder the blames or take the whole responsibility, even though probably some of the commissioners may not have any idea about the computational technique or tool. But still, as long as the staff responsible for doing computation presented the evidence, presented the output to the commissioner meeting, and we elaborate on it, and we debated on it, and eventually we made a decision on accepting or rejecting the result, then the responsibility will fall completely on the commissioner. So not the chairperson of the commissioner meeting, even though people tend to first point their fingers at the chairperson, but legally speaking, it's the commissioners meeting who will take the whole blame or take the whole praise, maybe, of adopting or rejecting a certain output from computation.
Yeah, which also stresses the need for them and not just judges to be able to understand what's happening. All right, final question. Yeah. When you get the Nobel Prize for Literature, which will be in the year 2030, the TFTC will still be in existence. And my question is this: what do you think will be the biggest transformation in terms of structure or the tools that you use or even the values that will come out of computational antitrust?
Actually, I really don't have a positive or definite answer to the questions. I just want to offer my wishful thinking about the future development of the TFTC. I think I don't think much will change in terms of structure, agency structure, because as the change of the agency structure require time and money. And I think it's a problem facing all jurisdictions around the world. Budgetary constraints and financial integrity requirement often limit the potentials for structural reform or transformation within the government. But nevertheless, I truly hope that the computational enforcement could reshape the TFTC in the next decade into an agency that prioritizes effects over legal formalities. Our enforcement initiative should align with the competitive dynamics of the market rather than being driven by the need to follow precedents. And computational enforcement makes the implementation of competition law more scientific and persuasive, so that will in turn facilitate the legal compliance by the business community as well as the competition advocacy made by the agency. As long as we continue on this path to encourage the use of more scientific and more objective measurement technology, such as computational tools, I think that is something that we could accomplish in the next 10 years.
This was one of the core reasons why the project was created, to make enforcement better, which benefits everyone. Not only the agency, but also the companies, because they have fairer decisions, and also the consumers, because they have agencies acting where they will benefit the most. So it seems to be a win-win. So we'll keep on pushing in this direction, and it's good to hear that you will as well, the agency.
It's really nice to share my wishful thinking with someone who shared the same thought.
Share the same, yes. Yeah, more effect-based enforcement in an age where we sometimes see opposite trends.
It's especially a problem for civil law country. I'm not sure whether it is the same in Europe, but I have this sense of that in Taiwan, in TFTC, most of the colleagues are still, especially lawyers, they are trained under the civil law tradition. They focus more on statutory interpretation and follow the precedent, apply the rule derived from ancient Roman law, something like that. They tend to forget the importance of the market effects.
And it's interesting because you may have indeed the code of the ancient code of Rome and Napoleon that will give you a decision tree that you could automate. That will be one way of doing computational law. Another way would be to say we do more of a machine learning, deep neural network. We gather the data and we let the system see what emerges out of it, which is more effect-based. So those are two possible emerges. And so for us to make computational antitrust evolves in the direction that we think is best. Okay, it was very nice to share some food with you in Paris as well. I wanted to put that on the record. On behalf of the whole group, the whole team, thank you so very much. I hope to see you soon, and to everyone out there, take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else too. Bye-bye.